Okay, guys, I'm back with chapter 16 of Phoenix Incandescent, Steps Forward. I'm gonna try not to be weird this time and make comments. It goes for now since I'm doing my own thing, but maybe someday I'll have some dry, boring audiobooks. Okay. Charlotte traced the outline of the sea swallow on the stained glass window. She rested her finger in the scratch in the white plumage and closed her eyes. This was it. This was the last chance her parents had to step back in and save the day. Would her father stride across the crunchy grass of the autumn lawns, take up his weathered backpack, and take her place? Would he wink at her from his kind, creased eyes and nod his head at her before pushing his glasses back up on his nose and reminding her that adventuring was his game? Would her mother return with a smile, slip off her high heels, and effortlessly slide on her hiking boots? Would she kiss Charlotte on the cheek and join Isaac at his side? Would she wave goodbye as if she were in a parade before slipping her hand in her husband's hand and leaving her daughter safe at home? Charlotte opened her eyes and breathed in the smell of books and leather of the library. Her father's backpack rested against the window. Her heart and her mind had collapsed into her gut. Her parents were not going to save the day. Her focus returned to the scene on the back lawn. Lodestar had come and gone. Sirach stood in the middle of the group, arms crossed in front of his chest, mouth tight and eyes hard. Alcott, Evangeline, Faunus, and Beau were all standing around Sirach, each in front of a pile of gifts. It was an ancient custom to give each person something at the beginning of such a venture, and Lodestar had insisted they followed custom. Charlotte looked at each face. There had been bickering, but Charlotte hadn't heard any of it. "I don't know what to call you," the haughty voice said from behind the double doors. From the double doors. "Nobody does." Charlotte slung the backpack across her right shoulder. "I have heard you called many things," Lodestar snipped. Charlotte let it go. "But I have yet to settle on what you are to me." "Do I have to be something to you?" "Child, we are all something to each other. Aren't I something to you?" Charlotte clamped her mouth shut. She took several deep breaths before looking directly into Lodestar's eyes. "What precisely do you want from me?" she inquired, kindly yet firmly. Lodestar jerked her head back slightly and took a step back. She turned her gaze away and dissected the room slowly, and then settled her gaze back on Charlotte. She softened her eyes for the slightest second before the shine and sharpness returned. "I won't know until I find it." Charlotte shrugged. "Unitars. Now, come on, you. It's time to take steps forward." Charlotte listened to the clip-clop of Lodestar's hooves as she took the longest possible route through the castle to the back lawns, kissing the castle goodbye with her eyes as they walked. It was silent and still, and in the moment of premature homesickness, Charlotte let a tear slip. She stumbled in surprise, reached out, and nearly touched Lodestar's flank. She cringed and pulled away at the last moment, cradling the hand in her other hand as if she had burned herself. "You don't know what to call yourself either," Lodestar said softly. Charlotte stared down at the mosaic begonia under her feet. She traced the orange petals with her toe and remembered thinking that this part of the hallway was a stone garden when she was a child. Charlotte cleared her throat. Lodestar cleared her throat. Wrong one. "You and I are alike in that way. Others give names freely, but you and I, we have expensive taste in names. There are names fought for and earned." She stopped walking. "I will find a name for you someday, and someday you will find a name for you. For now, use the names that others give you, the good ones. They will feed you until you have your own. Every now and then you will meet others like us, and someday you will have a collection of names to serve you, some free, some earned, some given wisely for a purpose. But make sure they serve you and not the other way around. Do you understand?" "Yes," Charlotte said. "You will understand more later," Lodestar said crisply with a tilt of her chin. Charlotte continued her silent goodbyes to the castle until Lodestar pushed open the back doors to the back lawns. The air was crisp and cold with warm with the scent of leather. Sirach began the gift-giving by passing them each a sword. Charlotte gave each team member a canteen and a package of jerky. She received a thick cloak from Faunus, an engraved knife from Alcott, a bow and quiver of arrows from Evangeline, a compass from Lodestar, and a lightweight leather armor from Beau. Gifts came from outside the team as well. Rhett supplied tents, Sebastian made them each a first aid kit, and Joseph gave them each an enchanted backpack. "Now," announced Lodestar, "we go forth into the unknown. Evangeline will maintain a shield that we may walk in and not be seen by Dane eyes. Make sure you stay within the shield." Why are we walking? Faunus rolled his eyes. I'd prefer a motorcycle, but we could take a bus or something. Didn't this place have one of those? It was blown up along with the garage, Charlotte pointed out. We could get a rental van. Lodestar and I would never fit in a Dane vehicle, Zorak huffed. Horse trailers? Faunus smirked. Zorak reached down, grabbed Faunus by his jacket, and pulled him up to his eye level. You would look good on a spit. He shook him once before setting him down. Faunus shrugged back into his jacket and combed his fingers through his hair. He cracked a half-smile at Zorak. It was a suggestion. Fauna and I once crisscrossed the country in the back of a Dane truck. It wasn't all that bad. The Magard is tracing all magic across the country, Alcott said. We generally do not trace magic, but we have reason to believe that the enemy has been tracing it for some time. This trip needs to be as untraceable as possible. If the enemy notices a trail of magic leading to a stronghold, then we will lose the element of surprise. My shield will be untraceable, Evangeline added as Faunus opened his mouth. He lifted his pierced eyebrows instead and started walking. Follow the fawn, Zorak said. They walked until stars shone in the sky. Evangeline knelt in a sandy spot not far from a stream and made a fire that burned bright yet compact. Warmth and light spread around the shielded area. Evangeline unfolded her tall, thin frame. Her blue eyes sparkled and her medium-length, light purple hair bounced around her face. She smiled at Charlotte with every inch of her face. Let's set up our tent, my friend, she giggled, upwind from the men. Charlotte's eyes flew open and she laughed. Evangeline smiled and sashayed away. Charlotte followed, curious about this young elf. Charlotte remembered Evangeline and Wilhelm as she grew up, but while she had grown from a child to a young adult, they still looked no older than when she first remembered them as a young child. Evangeline lay down in her bedroll when they were done assembling their tent. My toes ache, she whimpered, and I smell horrendous. I can't stand the stench, Charlotte confessed, and collapsed on her own bedroll. I thought it was only me who was bothered by it. Hardly, Evangeline giggled. Alcott can put up with it because he's trained to do so, but he doesn't like it. Lodestar is repulsed. Charlotte balanced her head in her hands. Did they hurt? Did what hurt? Evangeline rolled to her side. Your tattoos. Oh, Evangeline smiled. They did hurt, some more than others. Delicate white lines played across her skin in several places. I like them. Charlotte lay back and closed her eyes. I like your hair. Are you used to your hair? I don't know where my hair comes from, Charlotte confessed. It makes no sense at all. Perhaps the sense will come later. Alcott rapped on the tent. Supper time, ladies. They settled into a circle around the fire and chewed on their rations. Charlotte missed the warmth of the kitchen fire, the humor of Spindle's stories, and the taste of Basil's food. How quickly she had adjusted back to castle life over the summer. How quickly she was missing it. Had she really thought that she could have walked away from it forever this time? But she had thought it, and she would have. She looked over at Beau. What would have happened to him if she had left? She shook her head at the fire and listened to the crackling. This must have been a much faster trip for you the first time. Faunus nodded to Zorak after he finished his food. Alcott frowned. Are we back to this conversation once more? Centaurs are very fast travelers, as are fawns. You know this. So it's the elf and the girl who are slowing us down, right? Bird Boy over there could keep up with us. Faunus crossed one leg over the other. He took the twig from his mouth and started to dig in his hoof. Wouldn't it make sense if we traveled at the speed of magic rather than the speed of Dane? I'm only wondering if it would be more of a surprise if we got there quickly. We talked about this morning, Beau said. He crossed his arms. Remind me why we brought him. Remind me why we brought her. Faunus looked directly at Charlotte. You do know that you're a liability of the group, right? He shook his head. All that fuss for what? A cosmetic difference because she touched Romeo here, and skin that burns. Is she a weapon of some sort? He sat back against a tree. Here I thought the babe was going to turn into something cool if she survived. He popped the twig back in his mouth. Did you even try to figure out what you're capable of? Of course I did, Charlotte said. She looked around at the others. Hadn't she? She directed her attention back to Faunus. What is your problem with me? I might ask what everybody's problem with me is. Does nobody like the truth? Perhaps you should learn tact, Evangeline suggested. Don't the elves have enough tact to cover the rest of us? Faunus asked. Enough talk, Zorak said. Faunus, your babble's worse than the Danes. Faunus looked at Alcott. Are we close enough that we could go fast tomorrow and get there in time to get this done by sundown? We aren't changing our plan, Alcott stood. I won't listen any more to this. It's time we all slept anyway, Lodestar interrupted. Zorak, you have first watch tonight. Charlotte stayed at the fire with Zorak while the others drifted off to the tents. She watched the dance of the yellows against the shimmer of the shield around the camp and surrounding black of the night. Zorak stared up into the night sky. Am I really a liability? She finally asked. Have I really trained you for the past several weeks for nothing? Zarok said gruffly and waved her way. Charlotte stood. She would be getting no pep talk from Zarok tonight, and she wouldn't risk raising his ire. She passed the men's tent in the spot where Lodestar was resting. Lodestar, too, was watching the skies. Charlotte continued to her tent and found Bo waiting for her. He held his hand out, and she placed her hand in his. He lifted the back of her hand to his lips and brushed it with a kiss. He leaned in and whispered in her ear, "Good night, Karamia." Charlotte grabbed his face and kissed him hard. She pressed her hands down his neck, over his shoulders, and then down the ridges of his wings. She pulled back all at once and took a deep breath. "Good night, my Bo." She dove into the tent and zipped it up. Evangeline sat up in her bedroll, book in her lap, and her face red. "That must have been some kiss. I could feel it from in here," she whispered and shut her book. Charlotte collapsed on the bedroll and watched as Bo walked away from the tent. She looked over at Evangeline. "It was some kiss. Maybe I should have stayed." "Oh, give him something to think on," Evangeline laughed. Her eyes softened. "I hope you've not taken the words of Faunus to heart." "I think I'm getting used to him." "That's wise," Evangeline remarked. "My people practice a great deal of patience and respect when speaking, but even I find dealing with Faunus tiring." "We all do." Charlotte struggled to get comfortable in her bedroll. "I think you do well. You probably do the best out of all of us." Evangeline sighed. "My elders tell me I have much to learn." She rolled to her side to face Charlotte. "I may have seemed patient, but I was picturing him with a tutu and a ring of flowers on his horns when he talked of us being so slow." They both laughed, but then Evangeline grew serious. "I shouldn't have told you that. Your secret's safe with me, but we should probably sleep now. I'm not sure if Zarok or Lodestar will tolerate much more giggling on our part. It's probably not good camping etiquette." "Is there camping etiquette?" "Go to sleep, you two," Zarok yelled gruffly. Charlotte curled up in her bedroll. "Sometimes I burn things at night," she whispered. "I know," Evangeline whispered back. "I'll douse you with water if you do." "Thanks." Charlotte rolled over and watched the shadows dance on the side of the tent. "I used to sleepwalk," Evangeline whispered. "Sometimes I still do if I'm really stressed." "I'll find you if you do." Charlotte rolled back over to look at the quiet, wild elf who was not only accepting her bizarre tendencies, but sharing her own as well. "Thanks." The night was uncomfortable and cold and full of unfamiliar noises. Charlotte focused her body on relaxing during the time she couldn't sleep, and when the beginnings of morning finally toward the darkness, she sighed with relief. Nothing had burned that night, but her skin was on fire with an itchiness she hadn't felt before. She squirmed in her bedroll before she finally forced herself to get up and face the cold morning. She longed for something hot, anything hot, a shower, a meal, clothes straight from the dryer. Instead, she got rations and water and a bathroom break before marching. Her muscles ached from walking and from sleeping on the ground, but she pressed on and forced herself not to ask how long the journey was. She would ask tonight. She couldn't face a truthful answer this morning. She fell in step with Alcott after a couple of hours of quiet thinking. "Tell me about your homeland." Faunus laughed on her other side. "Why ask him about a bunch of old slimy rocks and caverns when you can learn all about the beautiful valley I call my home?" "I want to know about his home," she responded curtly. Alcott bowed slightly in his press suit. "The dwarves have 5 main homes in the country. I'm sure you can guess the whereabouts of 2 of the bigger ones." "The Rockies and Appalachians?" "Yes, I grew up near you in the smaller mountain ranges of your state, where I spent most of my youth in the summers. I took an apprenticeship in my younger youth in the Appalachians, as well as one in the Rockies when I was an older youth." "You have an older and younger youth?" Charlotte asked curiously. "A lot of us do," Alcott responded. "Faunus, how old are you?" "I am old enough to be married to my fauna and be the father of many fawns." Faunus left her side and circled the group in a light-hearted dance. "You aren't going to get a straightforward answer out of him," Alcott said. "Fawns have lifespans close to Dane's. At most, he'll live to 150, but he'll never look it, and he'll never act old or wise. That's why even when he does something worthy, it's wrapped up in a tone of voice or attitude that's hard to want to be around. He doesn't have an older or younger youth like the longer-living Magani. He's all youth all the time." "I would much rather have a shorter life of fun," Faunus said as he danced over them. "Of course you would." "What kind of Magani do you think is behind all of this?" Charlotte asked. "Do you think it might be a longer-lived one who has seen more sorrow? Do you think it could have been a shorter-lived one who lacks maturity?" Evangeline looked back at them. "We will not know until we know. We could sit around a campfire all day and speculate, but it would be a waste of time. The only thing we do know is that someone has chosen to follow a path of evil." "I'm surprised to hear that from an elf," Faunus said. "All your race does is sit around and speculate about what you have observed. I'm surprised the elves and the centaurs don't hold competitions where the goal is to put the most Magani to sleep with your long-winded speeches." Enough, Sir Rock said gruffly from the front. That kind of talk will get us nowhere. Some alliance we make, eh? Fauna smirked. The great alliance fell apart as soon as things got rough, and here we are, the scraped together remains. Zarok stopped and turned. The alliance did not fall apart. Those who left went back to their homelands to protect, train, and educate their people on what was going on. We are not the pitiful remains of something that was once great but defeated. We're the beginnings of something that will grow as needed. Why aren't the Magard here with us or in place of us? Faunus asked. The Magard is here as long as I am here, Alcott answered. Sure they are, Faunus mumbled. How the great and mighty have become lazy and ill-prepared. Nobody answered. Charlotte paced herself to the back of the group, where Bo walked silently. She rolled her shoulders in her neck, trying to ease the pain the backpack was causing her. She didn't understand it. She thought the enchantment was supposed to let her carry whatever she could fit in the opening, but clearly she didn't understand everything about it. Was there a weight limit? What did her father have packed in it? Charlotte looked over at Bo. His mouth was firm, but his eyes were soft and unfocused. She wondered if he was even more aware of her presence by his side. She slipped her hand into his hand and squeezed gently. Daisy, Daisy, he teased her. Bo Wingard! She pulled her hand out of his, but he snatched it back. All I did was hold your hand. Bo chuckled. He looked at her through his long, thick eyelashes. You don't ever just hold my hand, Charlotte. What's that supposed to mean? You may think that you're just kissing me, just holding my hand, but the truth is more than that. You parade through my thoughts, you capture my heart. He traced her lips. You inflame my soul. Oh. Charlotte stepped to the side and took several deep breaths as the heat surged through her skin. Dry grass sparked beneath their feet. Bo stomped the fire out and they walked again, apart this time. You don't have to look quite so smug, you know, she said to him half an hour later. He hummed. Charlotte slipped her hand back in his and shook her head. Let the man-boy have his moment. She blushed again. He did deserve it. After they ate the noon meal and rested, they took up the rear position once more. Bo tucked Charlotte into his side and lowered his voice. There is something that I have been meaning to tell you. Lodestar is much, much older than she lets on. She knows a lot more than most Magani. I didn't find much about Unitars when I was reading about rare Magani. How do you know about them? How many Unitars are there anyway? You have to look at the really old books. I found a book in my uncle's library. He paused. My other uncle. Anyway, I don't know how many there are, but they always come in two, twins. Bo whispered, one of the light, one of the dark. What is that supposed to mean? I didn't get to read that far into the book, he admitted. Typical. They walked quietly for a bit. Bo, I want to visit your sister in your homeland. I want to visit your library and read your book. Will you fly me there? I will fly you anywhere. And that's it for that chapter. And chapter 17 will be Rebirth. I'll see you in a little bit.